In Argentina, President Javier Milei plans to dismiss 70,000 government employees in the coming month. In Palestine, Israeli aggressions continue despite the UN Security Council's binding resolution ordering a ceasefire in Gaza. And in Burkina Faso, the army reporting imprisonment of more than 100 terrorists in the east of the country. Hello, welcome from the south. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The president of Argentina, Javier Milei, assured that he will not renew any of the 70,000 contracts of national state workers. During a speech in front of his country's businessmen, he promised the 70,000 layoffs while enumerating the achievements of his administration, referring to 50,000 public employees dismissed from their jobs. He added not only that, but also that contracts were terminated, pointing out that now more than 70,000 will be laid off. After the president's statement was made public, the Secretary General of the State Workers Association, Rodolfo Aguiar, indicated that such a measure was unthinkable since it would paralyze the state. On Tuesday in Brazil, President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva received the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, in Belém, in the north of the country. It is the first visit of a French president in 11 years. Macron begins his three-day tour of the South American giant in a symbolic place. In 2025, the state of Pará will host the 30th United Nations Conference on Climate Change, COP30. Together with the local and native authorities, as well as several members of the government cabinet, the head of state went on several tours. One of the highlights was a meeting with several members of the Kayapo ethnic group and their chief, Roani Metuktire, a world icon in the struggle for the preservation of the Amazon rainforest. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro denounced the destabilization actions and assassination attempts against him carried out by the extreme far-right. The head of state indicated that authorities captured this Monday two supporters of the ultra-right-wing movement, Vente Venezuela, who intended to make an attempt against his life during the march that accompanied him to register his candidacy for the presidential elections of next July 28th. Likewise, those captured will be presented before the Control and Terrorism Court for the charges of attempted assassination, instigation to hatred, and illicit carrying of firearms in places where it was prohibited. The president also pointed out that two terrorist groups seeking to destabilize the peace of the country have been dismantled in the last 15 days.
They are not only after me to try to make an attempt on my life, as was demonstrated yesterday with the arrest of two individuals from the terrorist movement called Come Venezuela. It would rather be Come Terrorist, and they keep silent. The right-wing governments keep silent, and so does the cowardly left. They are not capable of condemning the coups, the attempts against the revolution, against peace.
The government of Nicaragua sent its warm greetings to President Nicolás Maduro for his recent election as presidential candidate for the United Socialist Party of Venezuela ahead of the presidential elections on July 28, 2024. Through an official statement, the Sandinist government saluted President Nicolás Maduro, the first combatant Celia Flores, the PSUV, and the noble Bolivarian people at a time when the United States and its allies have once again unleashed themselves against the sovereign will of the Venezuelan people. The Nicaraguan government also ratified its unconditional love and its permanent fraternal relations with the Bolivarian Revolution to fight for the inalienable rights of both nations. The statement also highlighted the common destiny shared by Venezuela and Nicaragua in the everlasting struggle to live in a free homeland. From Cuba, Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez assured that Venezuela has the right to develop its electoral process without interference or impositions. In his official account on the social platform X, the Cuban minister stressed Venezuela has the right to develop the electoral process in accordance with its constitution, norms, and electoral schedule without interference or impositions. We reject reported attempts to resort to violence against the course of the process in the context of peace and security for the Venezuelan people. The regime of exception in El Salvador completes 2 years amid complaints from social organizations and citizens about arbitrary detentions against innocent people. Citizens are claiming the innocence of their relatives regarding the arbitrary detentions committed under the emergency regime. Humanitarian organizations state that they have received at least 6,000 complaints of human rights violations, including illegal detentions, death in state custody, and torture of detainees. The emergency regime measures has been extended 24 times, and it suspends the constitutional guarantees of the defense of the detainees, the inviolability of telecommunications, and prolongs provisional detention for up to 15 days. The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAI, held the government of President Daniel Noboa responsible for the brutal repression against farmers of Palo Quemado. State security forces violently broke into this community in the central province of Cotopaxi. Its inhabitants, few more than 1,000, and almost all farmers, reject the La Plata mining project, which will affect several communities in the area. Prior to the events, President Noboa, who has not been able to alleviate the serious crisis of criminal violence that the nation is experiencing, warned those who defend the land and the environment that he would not tolerate violent acts. In this context, Leonidas Issa, president of CONAI, reminded him of the state's commitments. The Bolivian government inaugurated this Tuesday the first biodiesel plant in the country in the department of Santa Cruz, with the goal of producing a cleaner fuel. Bolivian President Luis Arce stated that the plant will produce ecological diesel and will have a certain mixture of fossil diesel for its commercialization. Authorities estimate that the plant will process some 1,500 barrels of biodiesel daily with vegetable oils from plants such as macoro, African palm, and soybeans, among others. Edgar Cortez, the engineer of the company, Bolivian Fiscal Oil Fields, confirmed that the $54 million project is ready to produce and store the biofuel. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Those stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Russia, the results of the first investigation into last Friday's attack on the Crocus City Hall on the outskirts of Moscow confirmed the existence of a Ukrainian fingerprint. However, the head of the Federal Security Service, Alexander Bortnikov, assured that Moscow will continue to investigate whether the presence and participation of the Ukrainian side is real or not. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Russian Investigation Committee, Alexander Bastrikin, stated that all those accused of perpetrating the terrorist attack in Crocus have acknowledged their guilt. He also pointed out that the terrorists have detailed information about the masterminds and accomplices in the preparation of the attack. Pope Francis lamented on Tuesday the advance of drug trafficking and violence in the Argentine city of Rosario and urged to work for peace. The Supreme Pontiff pointed out in a video that it is necessary to understand the need for the presence of security forces to bring peace to the community. However, he admitted that in order to reach the path of peace, complex and integral answers must be found with the collaboration of all the institutions that make up the life of a society. Pope Francis emphasized the search for consensus and dialogue to generate laws and public policies that recover the social structure. He also warned about the complicity of the private sector and affirmed that there is a great task ahead for the business world, not only in the prevention of complicity in business with mafia organizations, but also in social commitment. Israeli aggressions have not stopped despite the UN Security Council's binding resolution ordering a ceasefire in Gaza. The Palestinian government accuses Israel of carrying out a massacre in Rafah and health centers. The foreign ministry assures the Zionists want to expand the genocide operation in Gaza in the midst of a deep political crisis. Israeli analysts say that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to deepen the ground war besieged by extremists in his cabinet, while humanitarian organizations are demanding that the United Nations enforce the ceasefire resolution. In Palestine, the continuous attack of the Israeli military forces keeps on killing elders, women and children. The Rafah citizens are in a dire need of humanitarian aid. Our correspondent Nur Harasin has the details.
172 of Israeli attacks on the coastal enclave, and talking about some of the highlights, the Israeli warplanes targeted the city of Rafah with tens of airstrikes overnight, even though until this moment Rafah is considered Gaza's green area, Gaza's safest place. Until this day, the IDF is calling actually Palestinians and asking Palestinians to evacuate to the city of Rafah. However, now most of the Israeli strikes and most of the Israeli attacks are happening in Rafah. Overnight, the Israeli warplanes targeted the Duhair family home, where 2 people were killed, including an 11-year-old child. They also targeted the Al Hamaida family home, where 2 people were killed, including 1 woman. Also, in a separate Israeli strike on the Ashabura refugee camp, the Palestinian journalist Ula Lubbad was killed along with her husband and 2 children, and this brought up the death toll here in Gaza among Palestinian journalists up to 137, and the total death toll of Palestinians since the 7th of October is now at 32,414 Palestinians. Talking about the humanitarian situation, I mean, things are getting bad, worse every single day, even though there is a great pressure on Israel and Egypt to allow more aid into the Gaza Strip. However, what is happening here on the ground, that we are talking about less than 108 trucks per day, while the coastal enclave needs at least 1,008 trucks per day on daily basis to meet the needs of the people. Nuha Razin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
Palestinian authorities denounced that more than 5,800 students have been killed by Israel since it began its genocide operation in the Gaza Strip. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Education, around 5,826 Palestinian students were killed in bombardment by the Israeli occupation forces since October 2023, and those injured reached 9,570. While in the occupied West Bank, 55 students were killed and 329 were injured. The agency detailed that 264 teachers and administrators were also killed. The ministry noted that 286 public schools and 65 schools affiliated with the United Nations Refugee Relief and Works Agency were bombed and vandalized in the Gaza Strip, resulting in 111 of them being severely damaged and 40 completely destroyed. UN's Human Rights Council supports the conclusion by the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Palestine that Israel is committing acts of genocide against that nation. The rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, explained that Israel is characterizing the entire Gazan population as targetable, killable and destroyable, and has ostentatiously laid bare its genocidal intent. Dozens of diplomats, mostly from Arab and Muslim countries and also Latin America, took the floor to defend Albanese's mandate and work. On the other hand, speaking for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Pakistan backed her call for sanctions and an arms embargo.
These acts of genocide have been motivated by vehement anti-Palestinian discourse, which characterizes the entire Palestinian people in Gaza as enemies to be eradicated or forcibly removed. This rhetoric has been pervasive across all segments of Israeli society. That Israeli high-ranking officials with command authority routinely called on soldiers to annihilate the people of Gaza is compelling evidence of explicit and public incitement to commit genocide.
We have a fun short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin American and Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Fun short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Burkina Faso, the army reported that it neutralized more than 100 terrorists in the east of the nation. According to military intelligence services, on Monday there was a massive arrival of extremists in the locality of Gayeri. On Tuesday, a ground mission with an air rearguard was deployed, and after an intense confrontation, they managed to eliminate 105 terrorists and expel those who survived the military operation. They also reported the seizure of numerous ammunition and weapons. This is one of the first massive operations carried out by the Burkina Faso army without foreign troops. Senegal woke up Tuesday to a new president-elect, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, a former tax inspector and political newcomer recently released from prison. Faye was catapulted into a presidential campaign after being backed by a popular opposition leader and politically incapacitated Ousmane Sonko. The election followed months of unrest ignited by Faye and Sonko's arrest last year, of concerns that the president would seek a third term in office despite constitutional terms limits. The violence shook Senegal's reputation as a stable democracy in a region that has seen a wave of coups. Rights groups said dozens were killed in the protests, while some 1,000 people were jailed. In this context, the newly elected president of Senegal delivered his first speech after his victory in the presidential elections. In his address, he said that Senegal will engage with its partners in a virtuous, respectful, and mutually productive cooperation.
I would like to tell the international community, our bilateral and multilateral partners, that Senegal will always hold its rank. It will remain a friendly country, a safe and reliable ally of all partners who will engage with us in a virtuous, respectful, and mutually productive cooperation.
Kenya's government on Tuesday began handing over to relatives the bodies of 429 members of Doomsday Cult at the center of a legal case that has shocked the country. Exhumed bodies from a vast rural area in coastal Kenya have shown signs of starvation and strangulation. Cult leader Paul Mackenzie is accused of asking his followers to starve themselves to death to meet Jesus and now faces charges that include murder. Authorities are using DNA testing to help identify bodies and their families. On Tuesday, the first bodies were handed over to relatives. Emotions span high at the Malindi mortuary as families collected loved ones for reburial. Some wailed overwhelmed. Humanity celebrates this March 26 World Climate Day, declared by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992, to raise awareness of its importance and the influence of global warming. According to the latest flagship report, The State of the World's Climate 2023, launched by the World Meteorological Organization at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, unprecedented weather extremes were recorded worldwide last year and numerous records were broken. Climate is defined as the set of weather and atmospheric conditions in a geographic area over an extended period of time, with variables such as wind, precipitation, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and temperature.
The year 2023 set new records for every single climate indicator. This annual report shows that the climate crisis is the defining challenge that humanity faces. It is closely intertwined with inequality crisis, as witnessed by growing food insecurity, population displacement, and biodiversity loss. Glaciers' loss was the largest on record last year. These are the water towers of the world. They are our fresh water reservoirs. Sea ice depletion in the Antarctica was one of the major climate facts recorded in 2023.
Now let's go to the world of sports, especially gymnastics, because the Colombian athlete Angel Hernandez obtained his qualification to Paris 2024. After the final round on Sunday, March 24th, in the fifth stop of the Trampoline Gymnastics World Cup, Hernandez qualified to the next Olympic Games. In this sense, the Colombian got the 41st ticket for his country in the international multi-sport event, and is the second gymnast to enter the Games, after Luisa Blanco in the artistic gymnastics. Hernandez got his place by placing 8th, 13th, counting the gymnasts already qualified, with 51 points overall and occupying the 13th position out of 16 eligible athletes in the ranking. We now move on to the world of baseball. On Monday, the Diablos Rojos of Mexico defeated New York Yankees by a score of 8-5 to complete a two-game series sweep as part of two exhibition games. This game was a culmination of the New York Yankees team's visit to Mexico as part of its preparation for the 2024 season. The Mexican League team's victory came thanks to a comeback on the scoreboard that allowed a Mexican roster filled with former MLB players to sweep one of the sport's premier ball and strikes team. After the game, former Major League Baseball player and current Mexican League player Trevor Bauer talked about his positive experience in Latin America.
I love playing in the atmosphere with the music's going the whole game, the chants. It's like a party every time they come to the game. It's something I think that baseball in America would be it would be good for baseball in America to have more of that. But that's part of the benefit of going and seeing baseball around the world and seeing different cultures, because you pick up things that are good, and Japan does some things better than the United States, and the United States does some things better than Japan, and if we can find a way to make all of those things come together, then baseball can be as fun as possible for everybody.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.